All right, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us tonight for the learning of Hilchot Shabbat. B'ezras Hashem, we have a lot to talk about. Continuing in the Melachot, I believe tonight is going to be Melacha number 9 already. Going to Melechet Tochen, Hashem, the laws of grinding on Shabbat. So, Baruch Hashem, we have a lot to talk about. Let's take a look. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No. 8. Melacha number 8. Sorry. Okay.
And
Getting there.
Tochen.
Tochen. Grinding. Learning for the Refuah Shlema of Kol Cholei Israel. Learning for the Refuah Shlema of Shachar ben Chana, Shmuel Moshe ben Pnina, Yaakov Yisrael ben Chana, Esther Helen, Mordechai ben Evelyn, also Eliyahu Chaim ben Nava, and Mordechai ben Adina. They all have a Refuah Shlema. Any other names if you want to add? Yechiel ben Fariba. Yechiel ben Fariba. Elisheva bat Neta. May they all have a Refuah Shlema b'toch shar cholei Yisrael. Amen. Okay, so in the construction of the Mishkan, so as we've been learning, all the Melachot of Shabbat, they all come from the construction of the Mishkan, whatever was done in order to build the Mishkan. That's the way Rashi explains it. So one of the processes that were used after, we always talk about these dyes that were used in order to color the curtains of the Mishkan that draped over the structure. And in order to get these colors, you needed to take the seeds out of those plants. And then, which we talked about how they did that, which you had to thresh them, which would be stepping on them, pounding them, throwing it up in the air, having the wind carry away the junk. And then you had to sift out and sort out some of the leftover junk that was still there. And today we're going to talk about the idea that they also had to grind those seeds. You had to grind them, and then you would be left with this powder. The next step would be mixing it with water, making it into a paste, and then finally cooking it, which is what would give them the finished product of the dyes. But the idea is that part of the job was grinding the seeds in order to get this powder. That was part of the production of the dyes. So therefore, on Shabbat, grinding is a melacha that is forbidden to do. So we're not allowed to grind on Shabbat. Now, how do we define grinding? Tochen basically is when you have a large object, you have a large mass, you break it down into smaller particles. And that could be for anything. It doesn't have to be only for food. It could be wood, it could be metal. If you want to take metal and shave it somehow, that you have like thin pieces of metal, or wood for that matter, it's also considered to be grinding. It doesn't have to be food. Remember, when we talk about the samanim, the dyes, that wasn't food. That was a plant, right? So therefore, these things are problematic on Shabbat as well.
And you shave it?
What?
You shave it like...
I'm saying it could be metal, it could be wood, it doesn't have to be a food, that's what I'm saying. So as long as you take a big item and you break it down into smaller particles, very small pieces, so that would be considered the act of tochen, the act of grinding. So what are some basic examples of tochen? So let's say a person has any kind of vegetable and he wants to chop that vegetable into very tiny pieces. So that would be the act of tochen. That's a form of grinding. Obviously grinding itself, which would mean, let's say you take some kind of a hard substance and you put it in a mill and you grind it, you crush it. For example, coffee, that you would take coffee beans, you want to grind coffee beans, you put it in a mill, a coffee mill, you know, even if it's not electric, you just kind of roll your hands or do like this on the top of the thing and it crushes whatever's on the inside, pepper, coffee, anything that you're grinding for the first time, making it from a big substance into a smaller substance and making it into almost like, very, very grinding, basically, thin powder or something like that. If you're making it into a smaller version of what it was before, that is an act of grinding, right? Clear? So far, so good? Yes? Any questions? No? Okay, great. Fine. Fantastic. So, grinding is forbidden on Shabbat. Now, grinding, as we mentioned, with a mill, which is again one of these types of tools that you could use, whether it's electric or not, is going to be a problem. Also, in a mortar and pestle, which is the big bowl, and the pounding
Grind
to
saffron.
exactly great. You want to grind saffron, right? So that's going to be something that you should not do on Shabbat, because if it's the first time that it's getting ground, you're crushing it. That would be a problem. But one of the interesting things about this melacha is that the rabbis taught us that even though grinding is indeed a melacha midoraita, but if you do the melacha of grinding, getting you the same exact result, but you do it in two very odd ways. In other words, you do not one shinui, which we learned about in the past. Shinui means a deviation from the normal way of doing it, but you do two shinuim, two deviations, that would actually allow you to grind on Shabbat. Very interesting. So for example, let's say a person has nice peppercorns, these actual pieces of pepper, and you want to make it into crushed pepper. So the normal way of doing it, let's say, would be to either use a mill, right? One of those pepper mills where you actually put it inside and you go like that. That would be an act of grinding. Or a mortar and pestle, which is this nice big bowl and this beautiful big tool that you pound on whatever is inside of that bowl. So that would be a normal way of doing it. But if, let's say, you do that with two shinuyim, which means two deviations. So instead of using the big mortar, right, the big, let's say, instead of using that nice big bowl, you're going to put it on a plate. And instead of using that beautiful pounding tool, right, you're going to use, let's say, the bottom of a cup, right? So you're going to get exactly the same thing, let's say. Let's assume that you know how to do it. So you're going to be banging on a plate with the bottom of a cup on these peppercorns. But you did it in two shinuim, two deviations from the normal way of doing it. The halacha says that's mutar. You can do that on Shabbat. Very interesting halacha.
According to who?
Everybody. Yeah.
According to who? To everyone?
According to everybody.
Including
Okay.
the Torah?
Including the Torah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, everything we're doing here is according to Torah, yes. We hope. at
No,
least.
but like sometimes you say
Yeah.
it's to Rabbanat, sometimes you say
Yes. Mutar. You're allowed to.
Is it one of those things where it's like you'll get a heavenly blessing if you don't do it?
No, it's mutar. You have a set leniency over it. If you do it in two different ways.
So it's not like even if you avoid that, you don't get an extra blessing.
Yeah, there's a reason for this. The reason for this is that in the first place, there's a whole question. It's not so simple. I just took it as a matter of fact when I explained it, that grinding applies to food. There are actually some Rishonim out there that disagree with that, and they say that grinding does not apply to food whatsoever. And being that that's the case, to begin with, the fact that we're saying not to pound into smaller pieces something which is a bigger item, that's a food, so that already is in a sense, a stringency. So now if you're deviating from that, already, what's the halacha? I mean, you guys, I'm sure at this point you guys know, when you do a melacha intentionally in a weird way, is that a chiyuv d'oraita or d'Rabbanan?
the Rabbanat.
D'Rabbanan, correct, because it's a weird way of doing it. Remember, the melacha was done in X, Y, whatever formation in the Mishkan, and you're doing it in Z, totally different way, right? So that is not what the Torah prohibited. So the rabbi said, don't do it anyway, right? But it's only rabbinic. So now you're doing something, first of all, in a weird way. And on top of that, it's not even so clear that there's a prohibition, even if you did it in the right way. So you're doing it in a deviation and another deviation. Mutar. Understand?
Let's say you want to make
Yeah.
salad olivia or mashed potatoes.
Okay, we're gonna talk about this stuff. We're gonna talk about this stuff. Let's just lay down the groundwork first, and then we'll talk about these things. So therefore, the rule is when you want to do an act of grinding, if you employ two shinuyim, you do two deviations from the normal way of doing it, then that would be okay. All right? Clear? No? Clear. Okay, yes.
The normal way that you use, is it only those things or the normal way that I usually do that?
The normal way that it's done,
The normal way that.
meaning not you personally.
Right.
If let's say on a commercial level, how is it done? Right? How did, or maybe, in general, out there, how's it done? Right?
For example, I remember I used to take like during the week, I would take like a fork to like smush my kids, like a baby's food.
Yeah.
Like let's say there was chicken soup.
Right,
I would take a fork and smush it,
right,
but you're saying that's not the normal.
correct. People that wanna, let's say the
But then
companies that wanna make the chicken soup flavor for babies or whatever, or that kind of thing. They use some kind of a machine. They use a tool. They use
Right. But
they
then I
do
was told-
something to
I
do
was
it.
told to even do that with the shoe,
Okay,
but whatever, I don't know.
We'll
That's
get
what I was
there.
asking. Okay.
we'll get to that. Okay, we'll get there. But yes, the question over there. Don't get confused. That whoever told you to do that with a shinui is agreeing to the concept that shinuyim help for grinding. The question that he's struggling with is this, which you're doing, considered to be a shinui? You understand? He's not disagreeing in the concept that the shinuyim help to make it permissible. The question that he was trying to address is he's not sure that what you're doing is enough of a shinui. So therefore, you might not have enough, of a heter. You understand? So that's going to be a question: is what you did a shinui or not? But the concept that shinuyim help for grinding is not in question. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah.
Right, I get it, but.
So we'll address later whether or not that's called a good shinui or not.
But that's not a commercial way of doing something.
So you're saying it is a good shinui.
I don't know, I wouldn't.
Okay, we'll get to it.
Okay.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Figure out.
I'm just trying to explain. Just the concept. Okay, fine. So again, when you do two shinuyim over here in this melacha, now don't get the wrong idea. This doesn't apply to every melacha. You understand? This doesn't always apply. Like we said, there's a special reason by Tochen where this rule will apply, but it's not something that you can take and run with for other melachot. So it's important to be aware of that. Okay, that's number one. So we mentioned vegetables and cutting vegetables. So obviously, we already got a question about salad. So what do we do for salad? So the answer is that the Bet Yosef explains that indeed we are going to be strict, and we're going to say that grinding does apply to making a salad. So cutting, let's say, a tomato into small pieces, cutting a cucumber into small pieces can be considered an act of grinding. But the Bet Yosef brought down the opinion of the Rashba, which is very important for our discussion. The Rashba explained that in the same way that when it came to the laws of Borer, we said that as long as you're taking what you want right now for immediate use, as long as you take the good from the bad without a vessel, and it's for immediate use, we say that that's perfectly fine. Why? Because that's not an act of sorting and selecting and sifting and separating. That's an act of eating. We said that's called derech achila. That's how you eat. Otherwise, how can you eat? You always have things mixed together. You want to take one and eat it. So that's called derech achila. It's an act of eating. Taking what you want with your hand for right now to use is an act of eating. It's not an act of separating or sorting. Says the Rashba, the same thing applies here too. When you grind, if you're grinding something for right now, he says that's not called grinding. It's called eating. You don't have to eat your tomato, one big tomato. You don't have to eat your cucumber, one big cucumber. You can cut up your tomato. You can cut up your cucumber. You want to eat it. You're entitled to eat it however you want to eat it, right? So it's not considered an act of grinding. Rather, it's considered to be an act of eating. So therefore, the poskim say that we go with this opinion of the Rashba, and we say that the Rama paskins this, and so does Rav Ovadia. They say, same idea, and others as well, they say that you're allowed to go ahead and chop up the tomato as small as you'd like, no problem. Chop up the cucumber or onion or whatever it is as small as you'd like, provided that it's being done for right now. Now, what's considered to be right now? So the same exact discussion that we had in the laws of Borer will apply here too. Right now means that you're about to have this meal. So let's say the men left shul, they're on the way home, you're about to prepare for the meal. Okay, we're going to eat now. So now I make the salad, no problem. You can chop it as much as you like. Okay, but there are some important points to talk about. Not everything is okay, even if it's right away. Yeah.
When I learned in my yeshiva, the teacher was saying that you shouldn't cut so small on Shabbat. Like you should make like different sizes.
Correct. So
is
grinding.
this a Sephardic?
So grinding.
Sephardic.
So no. So the thing is like this. Grinding is going to be only when you chop it up really small, like really, really small. That's called grinding. It's not called grinding when you make it a little bit bigger, because then you didn't make it really, really small. And think about what grinding does. For example, when you grind wheat to make it into flour, it's very, very thin. You took kernels.
Guacamole.
1 second, I'll get there. You took kernels, you took any kind of item, and you made it into like a powder. You made it into something very small, very thin. So by vegetables, as long as you leave them somewhat larger pieces, you don't have a problem of grinding at all. But that applies even if it's for later. In other words, I'm cutting a tomato right now or a cucumber for the meal we're going to have in 7 hours, right? So that would be fine even for then. Why? Because it's big. I didn't really grind. I just chopped up the tomato into pieces, but I didn't grind it, right? The act of grinding, again, it's really not so clear.
It's like salt and pepper.
1 second. It's not so clear what the sizes are. But the point is that when you grind it really, really, really small, so that we would say is definitely considered an act of grinding. Comes along the Rashba and all the poskim that agree with him, and they say, yeah, but even that's okay if it's for right now. You understand? So that's important to be aware of. So you're always in the clear if it's for the meal that you're about to eat, right? So you're about to have a meal, the men left shul. That's the language that we say. When the men are leaving shul in the morning, right? Or at night, they're coming home, they're on the way home. Now you're in the zone for the meal. So you go ahead and you want to chop it up very small, no problem. Why? Because it's an act of eating, it's not an act of grinding. Okay. So now,
So
just the caveat. What?
Do you need to do like if you want to grind salt and pepper?
Wait a second. So
Without
one
a
second. Hold on. Wait a second. So no. So there are a couple of things you need to be aware of. Number one, although we said you're allowed to do things for right now, there are limitations with that. And as a matter of fact, before I get to that, I want to mention one other thing. That is that on Shabbat, grinding is a problem for one category of food. When it comes to food, only one type of food is a problem, and that is gidulei karka, things that grow from the ground. So we're talking about onions, talking about cucumbers, radishes, fruits, all vegetables, anything that grows from the ground is involved in the prohibition of grinding on Shabbat. However, anything which is not from the ground, for example, let's say you have a nice chunk of meat, you have a cheese, you have an egg, you have things that are,
Fish.
right? Things that don't grow from the ground and you would like to grind them, okay? So the halacha says that that's not a problem of grinding on Shabbat. Only gidulei karka, only things that grow from the ground.
So not tuna fish.
You wanna-
make tuna fish, you take a fork.
That's not gidulei karka. We wouldn't call that something that grows from the ground for these purposes over here. Meat, cheese, eggs are not considered to be gidulei karka, things that grow from the ground. So therefore, yes.
Is like a, I just call it the potato masher thing. Can you use it? Is that considered grinding?
What is the potato masher thing?
Well, I don't know. I guess maybe if you're making like guacamole, because you know, like when you're making, let's say, egg salad or mashed potatoes or whatever,
It's a metal.
you like push it down and then like
Smushes it?
Yeah.
So it sounds like a tool that's meant for this particular act of grinding, right? Let's get to it in a second. You'll see where I'm going with this. Okay, very important. So first of all, so we're saying grinding does not apply to anything in the realm of food that is not gidulei karka. We have that clear, right? Anything that did not grow from the ground, there is no problem to grind. Let's say you want to take a piece of cheese and chop it up really small, or a piece of meat and chop it up really small, no problem. Or an egg and do the same thing. No problem of grinding. Why? Because it's not something which grew from the ground. Clear? Okay. Now, step 2. Although that is the case, however, there is another thing to think about, which is that Chazal said that we're not allowed on Shabbat to do things that appear like weekday activities. Weekday activities means when you use something that is designated for grinding. Even if in halacha it's not called grinding, then that is considered to be what's called uvdin dechol, which means a weekday thing to do. You use this tool on a weekday because generally you grind with this tool. So for example, if you have one of those, I've seen this, it's a type of knife, it's type of salad, I guess. It helps you make salad very quickly. If you put a tomato, you put a cucumber there, and then you just kind of chop it like that, and all it goes in one shot. Now it becomes very small pieces, right? So let's say you would want to use that for, I don't know, a block of cheese, right? And make everything very small. So even though it's cheese and it's not gidulei karka, that would be a problem, because to use such a tool on Shabbat, which is a tool that is designated for the melacha of grinding, you should not use that tool on Shabbat. You understand? That's considered to be what's called uvdin dechol, a weekday activity. Now, sorry, I have a question? Yeah.
So for sure not like a wrong.
Oh, so what about a grater? Exactly, a grater where you could take, let's say, a carrot and run it up and down and grind the carrot like that. Now again, we said if it's for right away, it's always permissible. How about now using a special tool that's meant to be used for grinding? Halacha says you can't do it. Why? That's called uvdin dechol. It's a weekday. It's a weekday thing to do. You use, yes, it's a weekday tool. It's something that is meant to be used on weekdays because you grind with it. And therefore, the rabbi said that is prohibited. Now, that in mind, that the general concept is any kind of weekday, meaning any kind of tool that is designated for the act of grinding should not be used on Shabbat, even if halachically what you're doing is not considered to be grinding. So, like you said, a grater, you want to take a block of cheese and grate it on a grater, you should not do that on Shabbat, because that is a tool that is designated specifically for the melacha of grinding, and therefore you shouldn't use it on Shabbat. Now, I did see 2 points about this. An egg slicer is not a problem. Why is an egg slicer okay? an egg slicer is you take a hard-boiled egg and there's this kind of contraption where it has these blades that go this way and you just put it down like that and it slices your egg. So I saw an explanation that it's basically like taking a few knives and just cutting, right? So they don't, again, it's first of all, it's for the purposes of eggs specifically. Are eggs something that are the melacha of grinding? No. So therefore, it's not designated for the melacha of grinding. And anyway, it's just viewed as a couple of knives that are like next to each other. Okay, so an avocado, is that you're saying you want to use the egg slicer for an avocado? So it's not a tool that's meant for grinding, it's an egg slicer. And are you actually grinding? Not really. You're just making a few slices with it. So therefore, it should be okay. I actually believe I saw somebody here say that. Give me a second. Yeah. You know who said that? Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said that you could use an egg slicer even for regular vegetables. Meaning like you said, you just want to slice them like that. He held that's not a problem. Okay, fantastic. Yes.
Does Gidulei Karka include fruits that grow on the ground?
Anything that grows from the ground, the tree.
Oh, tree.
Tree is also called growing from the ground. Gidulei Karka. Because it grows from the tree that grew from the ground. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't clear.
No.
Anything that grows from the ground, I mean, from either the ground or a tree as well. Yes.
So can you use an apple slicer for apples or not really? Or should you just use an egg slicer for apples?
Yes, so that you could. Yes.
Wait, so which one is this?
You could use the egg slicer for apples, right? So an apple slicer, now again, there's two things going for us over here with these slicers. The first explanation that we had was that it's something that is not meant to do the melacha of Tochen because it doesn't really grind. It just slices. Or it's not meant to do the melacha of Tochen because it's not meant for things to which Tochen applies. So over here, an apple slicer, Tochen does apply to apples, but again, it's just a slicer. So I think in that case, if we go with that explanation, technically it would be okay as well for that.
So you can't use a garlic press.
A garlic press is where you put the garlic through the thing and then you mash it like that, right?
And then like little tiny pieces come out.
Right. So that you should not use. That's meant to grind garlic.
That would be a good example.
That's a great example of what you should not do on Shabbat. Perfect. Very good. So far, so good. Everyone clear? Okay.
Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, what did he say?
Rav Shlomo Zalman held that you're allowed to put the avocado or any other kind of vegetable in an egg slicer. That's what he was saying. Okay, but again, I want to just be clear. You should not use a grater for, let's say, cheese. You should not use a grater for a carrot or for any other thing. Sometimes people like to grate, let's say, I don't know, carrots on top of a salad or something like that. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't use a grater. You shouldn't grate cheese. Now, I will, interestingly enough, again, there are some who say that if you have a special grater that is meant only for cheese, meaning it's not a general overall grater that could be used for carrots and this and that for, it's not designated for, it's only designated for cheese only. So then there are those that permit that as well. Because again, it's not meant to grind something which is the melacha of Tochen. It's meant for cheese only. So that, we learned cheese is not gidulei karka, it doesn't grow from the ground, and therefore Tochen does not apply to it.
Doesn't it appear like a weekday?
So it appears like a weekday thing when it's done for something to which Tochen applies. Like like fruits, vegetables, but this is specifically for cheese. So I saw this book as well. This sefer called Or HaHalacha brings down that if it's specifically for the purposes of cheese, I'll read to you his words. It says, "Ulam kayom miutzeret megaredet chadasha hamiyuedet legirut gvina bilvad." He says, today we have special cheese graters that are meant for cheese alone. V'achen b'megaredet kazo, such a cheese grater, en mishum uvdin dechol. It's not a problem of uvdin dechol. Umutar legared ba gvina b'Shabbat. You would be allowed to grate cheese if it's literally specifically created for the sake of cheese, because then already the type of melacha which it does is not a melacha which is forbidden on Shabbat. It's not meant to address fruits and vegetables. It's meant for cheese only. Clear or no?
It's like, this is totally random, but I just saw it today, so I'm just thinking of it. They have these like truffle rocks.
What's that?
It's like, I don't know what it's considered. It's a truffle rock and it comes with like a special brand. I saw it in Costco.
Okay.
And like, you literally, like, it's specialized for that, comes in the same pack.
Specialized for what?
And you like, not grind, you like, shave it, you shave it.
Anything?
No, just this truffle.
What is the truffle?
What is truffle
Mushroom. It's like a
considered?
chocolate. It's a mushroom.
A mushroom. So it's meant for mushrooms. Okay. So a mushroom, I believe we would consider to be, as far as this is concerned, gidulei karka, even though there are many other places where we wouldn't think of it as that, but I think for these purposes we would call it gidulei karka, so I would say not to use it probably. Okay, fine, good. So therefore, the very important rule is, if you want to chop any of these, let's say fruits, vegetables, into very small pieces, so the halacha is that you are allowed to do so, provided that you do so right before the meal. If you do not want to do that, if you want to do it way ahead of time, then do not cut them very small. You should leave them to be larger pieces. They should not be small, because if they are, then that would be a violation of Tochen on Shabbat. Okay, great.
So is
Yeah.
dicing finely considered very small?
Dicing finely.
Like
So this-
cutting a jalapeno in tiny pieces?
So the problem is that Chazal didn't give us an exact measurement, what's considered to be large and what's considered to be small. So I guess the safe route would be, whatever you think is large, make it a little bit bigger, just to play it safe, because we don't really have any specific guidelines on that.
So
But remember, if it's for right away, then you don't have a problem at all.
So
Yeah.
is it an Ashkenaz thing that they should make different sizes of vegetables or fruits in a salad?
No, it's for us too, like I'm saying. It's for us as well, right? You can't make it very small if you're going to be using it later. It needs to be larger, right?
Sorry, I don't. You said it earlier, just want to make sure. For good, usually karka, it's okay to cut it into small pieces if it's tar.
Correct,
Okay, so that's that.
correct. Very good. Exactly. Okay, yes,
You mentioned peelers.
yes. We mentioned it last week. Peelers, we said, are a machloket, if you can use them or not. But we came out that there are those that are lenient if you want to use a peeler, especially if it's the type of item that the vegetable comes off with a peel, or fruit for that matter. In which case you're actually maintaining the mixture, and therefore there's no borer being done. Okay, great. So let's continue. Baruch Hashem, we got through that. It's great. Now, so the question about mashing came up. Bananas, avocados, things like that. Let's say you want to do it for a baby. So how do you go ahead and do that? So first of all, so again, what's the idea of mashing? Is that first of all considered to be an act of grinding? So Not everybody thought that that's a problem. Some poskim, to begin with, disagree with the concept that that is even an issue, because what we've been speaking about until now is when you take one big item, you break it down into many small pieces, many small particles. When it comes to a banana, on the other hand, you simply press down on it. It's not becoming into small pieces. It's just one big mass that is smushed. It's not many pieces. So there are many poskim who, to begin with, don't see this as a problem of grinding at all. But let's assume if it is a problem of grinding, is there a way to get around it? And if there is, what would be the way? So remember that we said that as long as you do two shinuyim, you deviate twice from the normal way of doing it, so then we would say that that is something which is perfectly fine to do. So how do you deviate twice? So the Chazon Ish was very strict over here. And the Chazon Ish was of the opinion that to use a fork is not a deviation. To literally take a fork with the prongs of the fork and mash it that way is not a deviation. That's using a tool, using a fork. That's no good. That's no good. He held that you need to use the handle of a fork. Now again, I'm going to tell you a lenient opinion after this, but I want you to just be aware of the different views so that if you see somebody doing something like this, you're not going to be like, hey, what's going on? That's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. No, the Chazon Ish held that what you need to do is use the back of a fork or a spoon, something very strange. That's a real deviation, and push down on it with that, and do it on a plate, on a bowl, on something which is not the normal way of mashing. And that would be those two deviations we're looking for, and that would be acceptable. Only then, however, others, however, said that no, the fork is definitely the prongs of the fork, the beginning, meaning the part that you put in your mouth, that is perfectly fine to use to mash. And the reason is because the idea of grinding with a fork in general is a shinui. It's not the normal way of doing it at all, because like we were saying before, if you had to do this on a commercial scale, or people that normally do this in general, use some kind of a machine, use some kind of a proper mechanism to grind their bananas and whatever else it is that they're trying to eat, they're not going to do it with a fork. So a fork, even without using the back handle, is a deviation, and then doing it on a plate or on a bowl is deviation number 2, and therefore there's absolutely no problem to go ahead and do that on Shabbat.
Is a cutting board not allowed? I'm not sure.
Cutting board,
Yeah. is it
meaning
allowed?
like with a banana, you're saying?
No, like if you're chopping vegetables or it's mashed, then no, whatever.
So no, chopping vegetables would be okay. Again, when you're doing it for right away, we say it's not a problem, right?
And with a cutting board, it's okay?
Yes, with a cutting board is okay. When you're chopping vegetables, I know that Chambadya held that it's okay. And when it comes to mashing, so again, they're talking over here about using a plate, using a bowl, something that you wouldn't normally cut on, right? And that would be considered okay to get your 2 deviations.
How's a cutting board okay for something that people usually use to cut?
So over there, we're going with a different heter. Over there, we're working with the heter of using it for right now.
Okay.
You understand? This could be even done. Yeah, you're right. Technically, if I would be using the cutting board for right now, if I'm doing it for right now for the baby, then yeah, technically that would be okay too. But they're talking over here about a handle of a fork versus the prongs of the fork. Do you need that or not? Chazon Ish said yes, and others held no, you don't even need that because it's enough of a deviation anyway. Plus, you're doing it on a plate. It's not considered to be an act of mashing at all. Besides for which, there are many poskim who held in the first place. It's not called mash. It's not called grinding. it's just smushing. It's staying one thing. It's an avocado. It's a banana. It's not getting crushed into a powder. It's just getting smushed. Yeah, sorry.
Sure. When you say right now, what is the time frame?
So like we were saying before by Borer, usually it's around half an hour before you eat or an hour before you eat, according to the Ben Ish Chai. I think that was the language he used. Point is right before the meal.
Can I do it like, let's say when my husband goes to shul and like starting to do stuff?
So they talk about when your husband leaves shul on the way home.
So you have 15 minutes.
That's called right before the meal.
For the smushing,
What?
for the smushing, for the mashing.
Uh,
Do it right now, then
then you're good.
the shinuis don't matter.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
So the fact that I wanted to just smush that even with the prong of my fork to feed my baby right now.
You're good to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
See why I was told to do the shinui.
If you're doing it for right now, so then
I'm not doing it.
again, first of all, you have a lot of reasons that you could be lenient. Number one, many rabbis hold that it's not a problem because it's not really being ground; it's just being crushed. It's just being. It's not really tochen. It's just staying one mass, just in a different form. Before it was like this, now it's flat. It's not called grinding. Moshe held like that. I believe Chacham Ben Zion held like that. A lot of big poskim to Terlam. But besides for that, if some even say that the prongs of the fork are a shinui. So, okay, that's a beautiful shinui. On a plate is also a shinui. So, you have a lot of reasons that this should be okay. The Chazon Ish was very strict. He held you need to use the back handle. Okay, fine. So that's the discussion about bananas and about avocados. If you want to spread an avocado, like if you want to spread it on a piece of bread or something like that, same idea. That wouldn't be considered grinding, especially if you want to eat it right now. That would be no problem. If you want to make it like a spread on bread or something like that, that would be okay. Beautiful. I'll read you what he says over here. He says, "I go to Moshe Feinstein. Igrot Moshe says that by crushing a banana and avocado, he says, merely smushing something is not considered to be an act of grinding." So it's a beautiful point that Moshe is making. He says it's not called grinding. It's not called separate. You didn't separate it into small parts. You just smushed it. So therefore, in his opinion, that wouldn't be considered an act of grinding. Moshe Feinstein. Beautiful. Okay. Clear? Okay.
Well, usually when my husband is going to the shul, I started to make salad. It's not clear.
So,
I want to make so much salad.
so you want to make salad. So does your making salad involve like making very small pieces? Can you make them a little bit bigger? Huh? If you make them a little bit bigger, then you can make them when your husband goes to shul. Because as long as it's not so small, it's not called grinding. So don't make them small, make them a little bit bigger. Is that okay? Does that work or no?
My voice like small.
Okay. The boys like smaller. Okay.
Kids will eat like a bowl of the salad and they really want a bowl of salad, so like
you're not supposed to make a bigger, if you know that the right now heter is only for something that you can logically, that you can honestly believe you're going to eat right now. Right. So in that case, if they need it to be smaller, so then you have to wait a little bit till he comes back from shul, or till he starts his way back home.
How about some pieces be large, some pieces be small?
But I thought you can cut small.
If it's for right away, you
Oh,
can.
right away. Oh, okay.
Right. So what's called right away?
30
So it says when the
minutes.
husband leaves shul on the way home, that's called right away. But
There's
usually the idea is about half an hour or even an hour. It's some are lenient to say, yeah. By the Ashkenazim, they're much more lenient, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, much more. They say as long as it takes to be ready before the meal, you're good to go. Yeah.
But I thought they
Yeah.
were strict.
What? Not in this case. Not in this case.
Why can't we
Yeah.
like use?
Use the heter from them. This is all you got. This is what we're working with. Okay. So, okay, fine. Let's continue. Good. Okay, let's move. So now we spoke about using these tools. We spoke about these different things. Now I want you to know we're going to talk for a moment about something very important, and that is a special decree that the rabbis made in order to prevent people from grinding on Shabbat. It used to be, we're not so familiar with this. We're used to getting medicine and pills that are already made for us, but in places that they don't have advanced pharmaceuticals or even places that do, but they go with like homeopathic stuff, which is sometimes with natural herbs and things like that. So medicines used to be made by taking different herbs and spices and things like that and crushing them and grinding them into a powder and making them into a medicine that you could then take and drink or eat, whatever it was that you're going to do with it. The point is that medicines were made by grinding. The rabbis were afraid that somebody who takes a medicine on Shabbat is going to come to the prohibition of grinding. So therefore, the rabbis made a prohibition against taking medicine on Shabbat in the event that the person's illness is very light, which means somebody who has a headache should not take an Advil on Shabbat. The language that the rabbis used is mitchazek veholech kebari, which means if the person is suffering a very slight ailment, he's got a headache, he's got a little pain in his, pinky, something that's not really such a big deal. The rabbis made a decree that he should not, or she should not take medicine. He might be in a little bit of discomfort for the rest of Shabbat, but he's not supposed to take medicine, because since he can pick himself up and walk around and function normally, so then the rabbis said, don't take medicine. We're afraid that if he gets involved in that, he might come to grind on Shabbat. Okay? This is called shchikat samamani. The
How would they
gzera,
grind?
because again, the way that they used to make medicine is by grinding herbs together and taking them as one. So therefore, till this day, the rule is, generally speaking, we hold all throughout halakha that we have no right to overturn the rules that were laid by the previous generations of rabbis unless we can convene a court that is equal to their level, and we have more students that are, Talmidei Chachamim than they did. And being that that's almost never been the case, very infrequently has that happened in history, that a later generation has had wiser rabbis than the previous generation. So it just hasn't happened, and therefore the decree has remained in place. So for that reason, when a person has a slight ailment, they're slightly uncomfortable with it, so then they should not take a medicine on Shabbat. Now, the reason that I wanted to be very clear about that is because if, God forbid, it's something more severe, person has to take antibiotics, has to take blood pressure, has to take blood thinning medication, person has to take medication for, diabetes. He's got all kinds of really serious things that he needs to take so that he could take on Shabbat, right? Or even if it's not like really severe, even if it's simply he's not feeling well, he's knocked out in bed, he cannot function normally. He cannot just, man it up and walk around like everything's fine. He can't. He's really not feeling well. He's got the flu. He's got a bad fever. He's knocked out in bed, right? Such a situation, there is no decree against him taking medicine. The opposite. He has to take the medicine that should feel better. Somebody's on antibiotics. And if he doesn't take it, it's gonna, it might actually work against him, God forbid. He has to take his antibiotics. So the only thing that the rabbis made forbidden as far as medicine is concerned is when the person is pretty much okay. It's just that he's slightly uncomfortable, right? So for example, hand cream, right? That we say as far as smearing, which is another melacha we'll get to, as far as smearing is concerned, we say that hand cream that seeps into the skin and doesn't stay on top, even if it's thick, is permissible to rub onto your skin because it seeps in. That halacha is provided that at the same time, the hand cream is only coming for the purposes of moisture, but not for the purposes of healing dry skin that's already cracked and bleeding. Because if it's healing dry skin that's cracked and bleeding, now it's medicinal. But it's not medicinal that you really need. It's medicinal that it's a slight discomfort that you have. So to get rid of a slight discomfort and you're using medicine, Chazal said that's forbidden because of Gzerat Shechikat Samanim. We're afraid the person may come to grind medicine on Shabbat. Yes.
Okay, so I actually literally had this situation last week. My hands are extremely dry to the point that I can't even to pick up my baby.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I was like crying. It was hurting so bad.
Wow.
So my husband asked, and he said that I could use it if it's so bad that I literally can't function. But I literally couldn't close my hands. If you see that now, they look scary.
Yeah, I hear. So look, I mean, try your best to put it on before Shabbat, get some heavy duty cream before Shabbat, and hopefully it should last. If it's again, that's the proper terminology. If you're able to function, you gotta suck it up and function. If you're not, you can't. It's too hard for you, right? So then the halacha says, basically, in order to take medicine, you have to be knocked out. You have to be not functioning.
What if she just
Like in bed with a fever. You know what I'm saying? So
Pain is not.
pain depends. Again, if it's so painful, you're knocked out. You can't function normally. You cannot overcome it. You have to sit down. You have to, deal with it. God forbid, you're in a tough situation. You cannot function normally. That's when you could take medicine, right?
And then also I wanted to say, so vitamins.
Vitamins are no problem.
Oh.
Vitamins are not a medicine. Vitamins are just a dietary supplement. You're not getting your vitamin D from the sun. You're indoors too much. You want to get some vitamin D? Go for it. It's good. Yeah.
What if someone takes a medication electively, to grow hair, for example? It's prescription.
And if they don't take it on Shabbat, what will happen?
For example, if we give finasteride for men, if they don't take it a day, it kind of resets them a little bit. They have to be on a daily. They have to take it daily.
Okay, resets them, but how much? By a day?
Well, it's a medication. Basically, when you stop, the hair growth stops.
So
I don't know what not taking it one day a week would do to them.
So in that case, I would say, it's not really something which they, that would prevent them from functioning normally. So they probably shouldn't take it on Shabbat.
They could take it on Shabbat.
No, I'm saying they shouldn't. Because they're fine without it.
What if it's messing up, but it's okay.
Is it messing up? Is it really messing up their whole thing?
I would say if they're not taking it one day out of the week, it would have an effect. I feel like it would definitely slow down.
Slow down, but not totally inhibit, right?
No, not totally.
So it's still gonna work. It's gonna delay it a little bit, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Right. If that's the case, then I mean, it would be a question if, let's say, not taking this would destroy their whole thing. The whole program would be, not happening because of the fact that Shabbat they can't take it. Yeah, that would be something else, I think. But if it's gonna happen, just gonna be a day later, then I think, yeah.
Sorry, I have two questions.
Yeah.
First of all, birth control. Can you take it or should you take it before Shabbat?
As far as I know, that's something that if you don't take it, it messes with you, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should take it.
Within a certain time
But
frame.
can you
Yeah.
take it before, like, should you just take it before Shabbat? I don't know.
No, but what if it's
If
not a
you-
time frame? It has to be-
If you can, if you don't have to take it on Shabbat, like you could take it Friday right before Shabbat and Saturday night, and you're still within your thing, that would be good, right? If you don't have a choice and you have to take it on Shabbat, then yeah.
And then the other thing is, if someone's taking like herbal medication for arthritis, they take it every single day, comes in like essential 3 times a day.
Antibiotics are okay. Herbal, I mean, again, it all depends on
It's not a
what
small-
will be if you don't take it.
it will have an effect eventually. Not immediately, but eventually. If you keep missing,
Does arthritis mean the person will be in a tremendous amount of pain that he just can't function?
it's basically like it's like a program, I guess, for a few years to try to put you into, let's say, this. Pretty much to
To try and relieve the arthritis in general. And arthritis is very painful. I hear. In that case, it might be okay. I'll get back to you. Yeah, just we'll look into that. Yeah,
So what about giving babies Tylenol? And-
babies are a
and-
different story.
So but we
Babies, you don't have to worry about it.
Even if it's just a slight discomfort.
Babies, we always view children as if they're sick.
Okay.
No, I mean to say that they need more than adults. They haven't built up their immune system.
Or
They
if they
haven't.
have diaper rashes, you can use the creams and the ointments and.
So, yeah, so diaper rashes, I mean, cream, you have to know there's a problem with smearing. Right? There's a problem with
But
smearing.
even if they have like.
You have to
fungal-
dab it. What?
If they have like a fungal problem. or
Fungal
whatever,
is
like,
something else. Yeah, that you need
If they
to,
have like. if
you
they
need to help
like
them out with that, sure.
Antibiotic ointments and all these things.
again, you have to do it the proper way. You'd have to dab it. You can't smear it, but you can still do it for the baby, sure.
What
Yeah.
about Tums?
Tums, I don't know if Tums is a medicine. What?
It is.
Is it a med?
As
It's just
antioxidant.
like-
And aren't you like
I don't think
grinding
Tums is a
it
medicine.
with your teeth?
Well, no, when you're eating something, that's not a problem.
Oh, that's
right?
not a problem.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
chewable.
Tums,
medication.
I don't know. It could be that it's called a medicine and it's a problem. I'm not sure. You should know, by the way, you should know that there are some, I've seen some poskim that have expressed their opinion that even, let's say somebody comes over to your house, put it like this. So Baruch Hashem, we're learning today that if you have a little bit of a headache and you need an Advil, technically, we said you should man up and say, you know what, forget it, not taking it. I can function without it. If that's really your case, by the way, if you really can't, let's say God forbid it's a migraine, it's whatever, God forbid you really are getting knocked out and it's gonna kill your Shabbat, okay, you can take it, it's something else, right? I'm talking about where you could get over it and walk around and everything's fine. You don't, so we said, Halacha says not to take it. I have seen some poskim that have made the claim that really we could be even lenient in general in this area. The posek that I saw was the Sefer Sharim Mitzuyanim Ba'alacha. Rav Chaim Brown, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, actually of Brooklyn. He poses an entire long piece explaining why in his view it's okay. So I'll tell you where I use this. If somebody asks me on Shabbat for an Advil for his headache, I give it to him. I don't personally machmir on other people. So I won't use it myself for a small headache that I have, but if somebody wants an Advil for his headache, I don't give any issues. I don't start preaching to him. You can't use it. Because there are poskim that are lenient. Yeah.
Let's say like your husband has a headache and it's really bothering him. Does he take the Tylenol and go to shul? Or not take the Tylenol?
Okay, so that's a great question. So what you're saying is that without the Tylenol, he can't function.
Well, you
So-
can pray at home, like
Take the time. Take the time.
I'm asking for her actually, she
Yeah.
can use oil though, right? Like,
My hands.
yeah, like there's no issue with,
Again, the question is it medicinal or not? That's the only question. If it's not medicinal, then yeah, there's no problem. If it's medicinal, that's actually coming to heal her hands.
I mean, I don't have, I just have like a little bit of dry hands, so I'll use I'll use oil, I don't like, whatever, any oil that I cook with, I'll just like,
Mhm.
on Shabbat, but I don't know if hers is.
You could use cream just for if your hands are a little dry and it's not medicinal.
You could use cream for dry hands as long as it seeps into your skin and it doesn't stay on the surface. Right?
You rub it eventually.
Yeah. It absorbs, right? You rub it and it goes into your skin. It doesn't stay on the top.
Most creams too.
Great. Very good.
Unless it's like,
I'm sorry?
unless it's like shaving cream.
Not Vaseline. I'm talking about
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You cannot use
I'm talking about, let's say, those bottles of cream that you want to rub it. Again, even though it's thick, but the point is it sinks into your
Right.
skin. As Vaseline, I don't think
It
Vaseline.
doesn't, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so it doesn't. Right.
But you could use Vaseline on a child if you need to.
Vaseline is much harder. Vaseline is a problem of smearing on
Because
Shabbat.
one
Doesn't
time
sink
I
into the
had
skin.
to because my
The only
daughter
thing that you could
horrible
do,
rash.
again, if it's a baby and
And
you
her
want to
doctor-
deal with a baby rash, you can dab it. Just
I
throw it
did.
on, and then you can put the diaper on it.
I
Understand?
had to do a whole
Yeah.
regimen.
Okay.
I did a few things.
Okay. Fine. Now, let's say you need to crush a pill. So is that an act of grinding or not? So this is an important point for another important point in grinding, which is a rule called en tochen achar tochen. There is no such thing as grinding after something has already been ground. So these pills have already been ground ahead of time. They were put back together in the form of a pill, but there is no such thing as grinding after something has already been ground before. So therefore, you can smash this pill. You could put this pill in water, like those Alka-Seltzer thing, let them melt, no problem. You could, in other words, it's never an act of grinding on a pill because it has already been ground. Where does this come up? It comes up in many places. Let's say you want to take a biscuit and crumble it over, I don't know, some ice cream. You want to take matzah and what? Graham crackers. Very good. And crumble it over whatever. You want to take, what's it called? You want to take matzah and crumble it into some soup or something on Pesach, or
Or make a
if you could what?
or make a cereal.
Or something like that. The point is something that has already been bread. You want to crumble the bread into smaller crumbs for whatever reason. These,
Tashlif. Is tashlif okay?
well, we don't feed the fish. That's not a Sephardic custom.
Really?
Correct. But the point is, as far as grinding is concerned, that would not be an act of grinding at all, because once it's already ground, you cannot grind it again. I'll tell you where this comes up very interestingly. This comes up also according to the opinion of, I forgot exactly who said it, but some want to say that once you have a cooked vegetable, for example, a potato that's cooked, if you want to mash that potato, let's say with a fork, right? Or the truth is in any way, they hold that a cooked vegetable is already considered to be ground, and therefore to grind it further, meaning to mash it, would not be a problem of grinding on Shabbat, because any cooked vegetable has become so soft, it's like already been ground, and therefore there's no problem to grind it. Yeah. Okay. See how much time I have. You have a couple more minutes? Okay, I'll just make one more point over here, and that is when a person gets a stain. The Shulchan Aruch talks about a stain off of clothing. So let's say somebody got some cement on his pants, okay, or shirt, or wherever it is. So the Halacha says that if it's dried up, you should not. We don't consider it to be an act of grinding to remove that dry cement from the person's pants. But why would I think it's grinding? Because I'm taking this block of cement and I'm crumbling it off of the pants. So it's kind of like an act of grinding. We don't consider it to be an act of grinding, but we are concerned that it looks like laundering. So therefore, the rabbis made us put our hands inside of the garment and then crumble it from the inside, meaning rub it one side against the other from the inside of the garment, in order that it should not look like laundering, provided that it still leaves a little bit of a stain, so that it's actually not actually laundering the garment, but it's not as big of a eye attractive thing. Oh, look at that guy's big stain of cement that he's got over there. Why is it not actually grinding? I believe the reason is because this dirt was already, or this cement was already dirt at one point, and therefore it was already like little pieces at some point beforehand. It's kind of related to this idea that there's no grinding something that has already been ground. I think that's where this concept comes from, but that's the idea. So again, the halacha is, one more time, you cannot from the outside take both sides of the pants or skirt or whatever it is and go like that, because that would look like a form of laundering. But you could do that from the inside of the garment, and we don't call it grinding. So food stain.
Not a stain, like the same thing. Like
So beautiful. So let's say it's cholent, right? Cholent fell on the skirt, right? So the cholent is a bean that's already cooked for a long time, so it's definitely not a grinding question, right? If you kind of break it down that way, because it was already cooked, and cooked foods are not considered to be grindable because they're already soft from the cooking. On any cooked food, we're saying chidush that they're not considered to be grinding because once they're so soft from the cooking, they're already considered to have been ground already.
So when I was smushing the chicken.
Well, chicken doesn't have grinding to begin with, because chicken is not gidulei karka.
Right. Okay, so I really have no idea why I was told to do that with machinery.
Let's find out. Okay.
So what about baby food? I mean, like yogurt or cereal, when they tell us to make it with machinery also, mixing the oatmeal powder.
Okay, that's different melacha. That's lush.
Oh,
We're gonna get there, B'ezras Hashem. Yes.
Two things. One, pill cutters would be considered a special tool, right? Like if you're using a specific.
A pill cutter that
Yes.
specifically cuts pills.
Yes.
Interesting. Would that be a tool? Well, I mean, it's specifically for pills.
Yeah, it's called a pill cutter.
Yeah.
So then, if it's specifically for pills, we said there's no grinding by pills,
Because it's already ground.
right?
And then, so like if we were to like boil potatoes before Shabbat,
Right,
and then on Shabbat we wanted to mash it, we can mash it at any point.
right,
It doesn't have to be for immediate use.
right. Yeah, according to this opinion, yes.
how it's then usher to take pills if there's no grounding by pills. There's a whole thing behind it was because they're scared that.
Let's say it's a pill that you need to, that God forbid, not you, but somebody needs to take, right? They need to take this pill. So they have a hard time swallowing the pill. They want to crush it. To crush it, right? You're asking if taking the, again, what was your question?
I'm just not sure why it was.
I think if they're already ground, so what's the issue with taking pills in general?
Because the way that they made medicine was, first somebody had to grind these herbs. That was an act of grinding. Now it's already ground. The pill is already ground. Right? That you're getting it after it's a finished product, but somebody had to make that product first. It involved the act of grinding. So we're afraid you will go and grind the initial herbs that you take.
The
And,
initial herb.
yeah. Clear? Okay, fantastic. I think we're good with grinding. There's a lot more to talk about in terms of medicine on Shabbat, what you can do, what you can't do. maybe we'll go into that next week. We'll look into it. Okay, guys, we'll stop over here.
I want to say
Yeah.
Hebrew word